3rd, 2018. A couple of housekeeping items first. If you could turn off your cell phones, we'd really appreciate that, so it doesn't ring during the meeting. Secondly, the way things work here is for each item the city staff will present. Once they're done with their presentation, it's opened up to the commission only for technical questions. Once we're done with technical questions and anyone in the audience can speak, we ask that you step up to the microphone and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. Once everybody's had a chance to speak, it goes back to the commission for discussion and a vote, and we just move on to the next item. With that, let us call the roll.
David Borsick, Ed Bowen, Steve Cummings,
Here.
Michael Ford,
Here.
John Hintz, John Kiefer,
Here.
Robert Weigert, Thomas Perry,
Here.
Andrew Mott, Kathleen Propp, here, Thomas Wojtek.
Here. Moving on to the approval of the March 20th, 2018 minutes. Do we have anything to add or delete or correct?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion clearly passes. Let us move on to item number 1, conditional use permit request for an adaptive reuse of a mixed-use structure located at 320 Rosalia Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
The applicant is requesting an adaptive reuse of a mixed-use structure to establish an additional residential unit. The property is located at the southeast corner of Rosalia Street and Rahr Ave. It has a 2-story mixed-use building with 4 dwelling units and a commercial unit on the ground floor, as well as a 400-square-foot detached garage and open parking area. According to the applicant, the principal structure was originally built with 5 dwelling units, with one of the units being converted to a commercial space within the past 50 years and uses a hair salon for about the past 40 years. According to city assessor records, it was last listed as a salon in 2015. According to the applicant, the 4 existing dwelling units in the structure are all 1-bedroom or studio apartments. The city assessor did have historical records from 1969 that showed there was 3 2-bedroom units and possibly an efficiency apartment at the time. The general area is predominantly single-family neighborhood with scattered 2-family uses. And here's an aerial view of the site. The current use of the property is a legal non-conforming use, as the SR9 zoning district does not allow multifamily or commercial uses. The petitioner would like to convert the existing commercial space to a 1-bedroom residential unit. The application states that the commercial unit still has a full bathroom and kitchen, and the applicant is not proposing any exterior alterations to the site. Here's the existing site plan. It has a 2-stall detached garage and a 5-stall open parking area on the east side of the property. The zoning ordinance requires a minimum of 10 total parking stalls for a 5-unit multifamily use. However, staff does not have concerns with the lack of parking spaces on the property, as the conversion of a commercial unit to a 1-bedroom residential unit does not result in an increased off-street parking requirement. Also, the proposed 1-bedroom apartment is a less intensive use than a commercial unit and should result in less vehicle traffic to the site. Conversion of the site to an entirely residential land use will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and staff believes that the new use will be no more impactful to the neighborhood than the previous commercial use. And here's a view of the building. And here's a view of the parking areas. On the left shows the open parking area with 5 stalls, and on the right you can see the 2-stall detached garage with pavement in front of it. And staff recommends approval of the proposed conditional use permit for an adaptive reuse of a mixed-use structure at 320 Rosalia Street as proposed, with the findings listed in your staff report.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions? Okay, seeing none. Anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Come on up, man.
Hannah Smet, S-M-E-T,
And your address?
303 Pearl Avenue, Suite A. I am the attorney of record for 3710 Lisbon LLC. The owner of the property apologizes that he couldn't be here. I don't really have anything in addition to add that wasn't listed in the report from the department, but if anyone has any specific questions, the owner also had one of the individuals, the contractors who did work on the property, such as the re-siding, which was done, I believe, in 2017, February. Here to answer any specific questions with respect to the interior of the unit, the commercial unit, and its existence and what it looks like to be converted to a residential unit, as well as the parking, the surface area, and anything else that needs to happen with the unit to convert it to the residential use. But if anyone has any questions, in addition to what was listed in the application, I can provide those. Otherwise, if they have specific questions with respect to the actual unit, the contractor can answer those.
All right, do we have any questions for the counselor? None.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Ron Hanchy, I'm the coordinator for the Stevens Park Neighborhood Association, and the Stevens Park Neighborhood Association is very interested in the quality of life of our area, which is from Bowen Street to the lake and from Washington Avenue to the river. We polled our steering committee of 8 people and did some research on the property, and there are some discrepancies that we found relative to the petitioner's request and the assessors. The petitioner says that there are 7 adults living in the facility, 4 apartments, one's a studio, and one is and the other 3 are supposedly 1-bedroom apartments. The assessor indicates that the property has 6 and 1/2 bedrooms. So that would mean that you would be adding 2 people per bedroom. You could have up to 15 people living in that building. Presently, the petitioner says there are 7. So if you had that many people in the building, you'd have to have 15 parking spaces. Presently, the building only has 7 parking spaces. The unattached garage is used strictly for storage and is not a parking space presently. So, and on behalf of the Stevens Park Neighborhood Association, we polled our steering committee, and the steering committee indicated that they would request that the Planning Commission not honor this request to do an adaptive reuse because of the number of parking spaces potentially they could have on that site, that they would need 15 instead of the present 7 that they have, or the potential of 9 that they're quoting. So therefore, we'd like to have the commission not approve the conditional adaptive reuse.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Alex Duglo, W7475 Lincoln Road. And just touch base on the parking. I think as a studio, if this was converted to a studio, just 1-bedroom studio, I think it's less impactful for the parking rather than the commercial use that was used. Whereas you're having people come and go. If it was, if he does rent it out for a commercial use, I think you're going to have less parking having it the 1-bedroom studio. Even if they do have the garage just for storage, the 2 parking spots in the driveway, and he's saying if there's 15, 14 people there, it's just kind of a discrepancy there.
So how many people currently reside there?
I believe 7. I believe. So
Go ahead, Kathy.
What's your reaction to Mr. Hanchy's assertion that there are 6.5 bedrooms?
no, I believe they're all 1-bedroom or studio apartments. I haven't been through every single one, so I'm not 100% positive, but I just know this commercial one is going to be a studio, where it's not like a multi-bedroom. Yeah.
Not a studio.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the gentleman, as long as he's up here? Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, public comment is closed. Back to the commission. Yes.
I guess my question for this body, I guess for the city, is that it would be inspected, correct, after this conversion occurs?
Yes, they would need a building permit for the conversion.
Okay, so there'd be a reality check to see what's actually happening on the ground there.
Only for the
Any
one,
unit.
Only for the one new unit,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
But that's all we're debating tonight, correct?
Correct, the other uses are.
It's already happening.
The discussion? Steve?
There are currently how many apartments in the building?
4.
What are the sizes of each unit?
They're listed as each 1 bedroom or studio. Says 1 studio and 3 1-bedroom units, according to the applicant.
We can, we didn't cross-check that with the assessor's records, I don't
I
believe so.
checked, and they only had from as it said from historical records from 1969 is the last they had, and it had 3 2-bedrooms at the time, and possibly an efficiency as well. But that was dating back to 1969.
That's the best information that we can go off of, we don't go off and do an inspection of each of the units.
We have not physically gone through it to see what has in fact happened to the
Nope.
primary or the second.
Correct, we rely on the applicant and/or our assessor data or any other data that we have actually on file.
That,
Go ahead, Kath.
that assessor data sounds pretty old.
Can only get what they give to us from an assessment. It would be old, sometimes they won't let you in, so you can't update your assessment files.
Yeah.
So we're
well, how do
completely
we,
at their mercy.
How do we deal with this discrepancy, the allegation that there are way more units? What if there are way more bedrooms on the property?
Then we'd
Does
have-
the
then-
staff still,
Then we have to do an analysis of whether, how long have those bedrooms been in effect? Are they considered to be non-conforming? Because if it's been around since, those units have been around since the 50s, we didn't have a zoning code at the time that addressed parking, so it would have been previously not, it would have been a previous non. It's when you start to change, when you alter the use, and when they're altering use from going from a commercial unit to a residential unit, you're changing the conditions. Those are the things you can look at to make sure that you have the parking that's adequate to meet the additional conversion unit. Mark, what do you think?
I think from a staff's perspective, the other units are less of a concern. The way we're viewing this is a commercial unit versus a 1-bedroom or studio unit that is put in. From a parking standpoint, we believe the transition of that single commercial unit to a single residential unit is less impactful. The other units, regardless of what decision this body and council would make, is not going to change. So if they are in fact all 1-bedrooms, or they are in fact some 2-bedrooms, that parking is what it is and has historically been that way. Our consideration that we view with the adaptive reuse is a salon use more impactful from a parking standpoint than a single efficiency unit. And our belief is that single efficiency unit is less impactful than the commercial.
okay, so even if there were to be more bedrooms, this is not gonna affect the staff recommendation to approve this? Since we're only talking about the single unit,
That's the only
One-
change happening.
relatively small portion of this building.
Correct.
Okay,
If it was a complete conversion, yeah, I think that'd be
Okay.
fair game, but we're talking about, we're transferring, like Mark said, from a commercial unit, which is generally gonna draw more trips to the area. Now, is it better for the neighborhood? Probably, if you have a salon, it's one of those neighborhood functions, but, we know how neighborhood businesses are going. Everything's moving out to downtown or out west side of town. So we know that, the commercial unit is gonna drive, you're gonna have employees there, then you're gonna have customers driving more traffic into that area. So when we did our analysis, we looked at it from that standpoint, what's gonna have more traffic impacts on the neighborhood, and we thought just having a 1 studio is gonna probably have less trips generated, less impact on the neighborhood.
okay.
All right, other thoughts? Any motions?
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, moving on, item number 2, conditional use permit request for an aquaponic facility and thrift shop located at 753 North Main Street.
Okay, so this was previously a daycare facility, and prior to that, it was a greenhouse. So just kind of a little quick history here. This is the existing land use pattern. It is a commercial site. We do have a mixture of kind of commercial to the east and north with some residential to the west and south. So we do have quite a bit of a mixed use area. Here's kind of a site plan of the area. The applicant is proposing to go into the existing building, make no exterior alterations to the parking lot or the building, and they're looking to institute 2 new uses to this structure. The first being the aquaponics portion, which would mainly be housed in the greenhouse portion of the building, where the fish would be grown, the plants would be grown that are associated with that aquaponics facility. And then they would have inside the main portion of the building some storage and ancillary uses that help support that aquaponics facility. And then a thrift store, secondhand store, would occupy the remainder of that primary structure. The applicant wants to move their existing thrift store location to this area. They feel this area better suits kind of their clientele and the needs of the neighborhood. So they'd be looking at raising fish such as tilapia, trout, bluegill, perch, bass, and then growing a variety of different leafy green vegetables, examples being, cabbage, lettuce, basil, spinach, cucumbers, tomatoes, those type of things. The applicant has indicated that then those would intend to be sold both to local markets, local farmers markets is kind of their intent for how this facility would operate. Again, no exterior changes are proposed to the site for either the parking or the building. I will continue to utilize the existing 3 drive entrances to the facility with about 25 parking spaces. No signage plans have been submitted at this time, so they will need to meet the underlying UMU zoning district for any wall or freestanding signage that they would choose to change in this area. No landscaping plans or stormwater regulatory plans have been provided because they're not required, as no exterior changes are taking place. So staff does recommend approval of this site with the findings listed within the staff report. It is our belief that the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding and is unique reuse of the building, kind of reintegrating that greenhouse component that was previously there.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions? All right, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir. Give us your name and address, please.
I'm Reverend Richie Cole. First name is spelled R-I-T-C-H-I-E. Last name is C-O-L-E. My home address is N9586 Van Dyne Road in Van Dyne. I am the general manager for Jericho Road Ministries, and we own that building. And the only thing that I would add is that the idea is to start this out, the food going to our food pantry. And if we have excess food, looking at marketing that. But other than that, everything you stated there was accurate.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the gentleman? Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, call the roll.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Moving on to item number 3, preliminary plat for the creation of a 61-lot, single-family residential subdivision at the 3300 block of West 9th Avenue, Pickert Estates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
As you just mentioned, this is a request for a preliminary plat for a 61-lot land division or subdivision, residential subdivision, located at the 3300 block of West 9th Avenue. And the site is approximately 350 feet or so east of Clairville Road. This area is formerly part of the Zone C expansion area with the town of Algoma, identified with our cooperative plan with the city of Oshkosh and town of Algoma. At the end of February, the property attached to the city as part of the Pickard voluntary attachment to initiate the process of the proposed subdivision. The area was attached with the single-family residential 5 zoning, or SR5, to permit the proposed residential development. And the city's comprehensive land use plan recommends this area suitable for residential development, so the proposed preliminary plat is consistent with that recommendation. The plat, which is, okay, I'm sorry, here's just the land use, aerial photo showing the site. Currently it is being farmed and will continue to be farmed. Slowly be consumed by the residential development over time. Here's a copy of the plat. The preliminary plat utilizes the entire site, which is approximately 35.8 acres in size, and is proposed to be platted with 61 single-family lots and 5 outlots. The proposed lots range in size from about 1/4 of an acre to just under 1 acre in size. All the lots do meet the minimum requirements in the SR5 zone district in regard to width, depth, and area. The proposed dwelling unit total is 61 units on a 35.8 acre site, which gives it a density which is fairly low at 1.7 units per acre. The SR5 district does have a maximum density of 5 units per acre, so it does meet that threshold. Just going to go over some of the outlots. There are 5 outlots in total on the preliminary plat. Outlot 1, which is located at the southeast corner. There we go. Down here at the southeast corner of the development. It's just under 1/2 an acre in size, and it's proposed to be used for construction of a small storm water pond that will service this area of the proposed development. Then up on the north side, we have Outlot 2, which runs along the entire northern length of the property. This Outlot 2 is sized at about 2.7 acres. The purpose of this outlot is to allow stormwater discharge, or allow stormwater to discharge to an open channel, which runs along the length of the property and then flows west towards Clareville Road and then up north. Outlot 3, which is located in the center of the development, is about 3.5 acres in size, centrally located, and will serve as a large primary stormwater detention pond, which will service most of the development. Outlot 4, which is right here, is 1.4 acres in size and is proposed to be utilized for parkland for the development. Then lastly, Outlot 5, which is a small little finger strip over at the southwest corner of the development, is 0.3 acres in size and is more or less a remnant piece left over from the parcel layout, and no specific use has been identified. The preliminary plat has a fairly large street network consisting of several new rights-of-way dedications, totaling about 5.7 acres of land. Access to the site will be initially from 2 points off of West 9th Avenue, one near the southeast corner and another one located at the southwest corner of the development. The separation between the 2 streets is approximately 1,000 feet, which meets code's requirements for separation. In addition to that, there are 2 small street segments which head towards the east of the development. Go back to the air photo here. The purpose of those 2 street connections heading to the east is the city has not heard of any firm plans for development of this site. It is currently owned by First English Lutheran Church. They have not made any committals to developing on a site, so with that in mind, the city recommended that these 2 streets be dedicated to allow for potential residential development to the east, and that would negate the requirement for another street connection to West 9th Avenue. Lastly, there's another street named Mary's Place, which runs the length of the development, kind of centrally located. And again, staff recommended that the street extend all the way to the western portion of the property for future extension and connection to Plairville Road. The city envisions eventually this area will be developed residentially as well, and the city thought this was an opportunity to provide another entrance into the subdivision, so that's the reason why we recommended that additional street connection to the west. All the streets meet the minimum code requirements of 60 feet wide for local residential streets, and the proposed street names have all been submitted to and approved by Winnebago County. Okay. After preliminary plat approval, the applicant is planning to develop the subdivision in 2 or more phases. On the screen in the white areas, that's the proposed phase 1 areas, which encompasses lots 1 through 23 and outlots 1 through 4 and portions of the planned streets. The developer is planning to submit the phase 1 final plat for review shortly after preliminary plat approval in hopes of breaking ground either late spring or early summer of 2018. The plat's been submitted to the city's police and fire departments and did not indicate any concerns to service the proposed development. And the Oshkosh Area School District has been notified of the development and has not responded with any concerns about being able to accommodate the additional population. The Department of Public Works reviewed the ability for the city to provide services to the development. City sewer and water main currently just entered the development site on West 9th Avenue and will require some minor extensions to reach the center line of Paul's Place, which is the easternmost northwest street. This utility extension has not been budgeted in the 2018 CIP, so therefore the developer will be responsible for construction of these extensions. At the final plat approval, the petitioner will be required to enter into a developer's agreement with the city for construction of utilities and street construction. This agreement can't be finalized until final utility and paving plans are complete and cost estimates are provided to the city. For phase 1, grading and drainage plans have been submitted to the city for initial review. The developer has been working with the stormwater engineers on preparing designs based on the city's stormwater code requirements. These plans will be required prior to final plat submittal and common council approval. The preliminary, I can't talk today. The preliminary plat does show all required easements for stormwater facilities needed for the proposed stormwater system for the entire site. Next, the proposed parkland. I'm just going to briefly touch on that, which is located right in the screen area. So obviously the parkland in physical form has been included with the preliminary plat. The dedication requirement equates to 67,100 square feet of area, or 1,100 square feet per lot. Or there is an option of payment in lieu of land dedication at $400 per lot. The Parks Department did review this and is recommending dedication of land versus fees, as there is a lack of park space in this area of the city. The Parks Department has been working with the developer to determine an appropriate location. Parks Director Ray Maurer is here to discuss this further. There is the opinion that the park may be optimally be located along the western fringes of the development. This would allow potential expansion of the park into this vacant land over here to accommodate that area's parks needs. As drawn, the proposed park is short by about 6,800 square feet of area, which equates to 7 lots. To make up for that difference, The developer would have to make up the difference in fees in lieu of, which would total $2,800. The Parks Department does have this plat on the next Advisory Parks Board meeting, which will be meeting on April 9th to review the proposed dedication and make a recommendation to the Common Council. Street lighting plans and tree terrace plans have been submitted. Initial reviews indicate that the lighting and terrace tree plans meet minimum code requirements, but will be reviewed reviewed by the Electrical Division and Forestry Department. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the 61 lot Pickard Estates preliminary plat with one condition, that a combination of parkland dedication and fees in lieu of parkland is utilized and approved by the Advisory Parks Board.
Thank you, Jeff. Technical questions? Ed?
It's not in the staff report, but you mentioned it while you were talking just a second ago, Jeff. The location of that park dedication, where it is versus where you mentioned that maybe it would be more beneficial to the overall area over on that west side of it.
Correct.
I guess, is there enough of an opinion on your end? I mean, is that a Parks Department opinion? Is that your opinion? Is that?
Well, I think it's.
But I guess, are we okay with what's shown?
Both have
I'm
advantages.
trying to unpack that statement, because I don't really, it doesn't jibe with what we're looking at, and it doesn't jibe with what's in the staff report.
I think once we get raised here, and we can talk a little bit about that park situation, but I think there's concerns about the park in its current proposed location not being as well serving for the general area, for
Right.
the entire area as it
Right.
develops. So I think there's a preference to wanting it on that west side versus on that side of the development. So I think that's one of the main concerns. I'm not going to speak for Ray. Ray can Ray can say it. And
Okay. Kathy, you,
Go ahead, and then I'll
Okay.
question, I'll raise issues.
okay.
Sure. Thanks. Again, Ray Mauer, Parks Director. And we have been working with planning staff and the developer on a number of different designs for this development. There were probably 3 or 4 different designs that came in.
I think that's an important consideration. We have been working with it. We've been trying to come up with the optimal location. It's moved a few times. The subdivision design has changed a few times. So it's just, put that on the table that we have been trying to work.
And essentially, for me, the parkland, where it's currently located, and I've shared this with the developer, and I said that, it's acceptable, but it's not the site that I would prefer, or the city, I think, would prefer. For me, just simply looking at the subdivision, I would prefer to see it essentially located more within this subdivision, whether that's around the stormwater pond, or as Jeff had indicated, on the west side, there's 5 lots. We actually looked at those 5 end lots, and that equates to about 1.4 acres. What that would do, knowing that eventually to the west of this development, there is going to be future residential development, when that is developed, we could add on some parkland further west to accommodate both this subdivision and the future one. And I know there's an issue with that when we brought it up to the developer. He does not own those properties. A partner or a relative, I believe, owns those, and they were not willing to give those up for the parkland. So location-wise,
Owns the
far west.
The lot or the land that's west of the
land?
No,
subdivision?
actually
side
in this development,
Oh, it's
Go back
part
to-
of this.
Go back to the parcel map, Jeff.
so the western portion of that
Oh.
whole development is not owned by the current petitioner.
Got it.
So that became an issue. So again, location-wise, it's not the optimal location that I would prefer. We can support there, but I think looking at the future growth in the existing development, you've got children most likely going to be having to walk quite a ways to get to a neighborhood park.
Kathy, do you have any questions for Ray?
Yeah, I was gonna ask a couple questions before you had a chance to get up here, but, so I'll ask one and then something for you. Clairville Road, is that as far as the city will be expanding when the town of Algoma expansion area is finished? Or
Nope,
do we
there-
expand further?
We do expand further.
We are taking it into the west, or so we do continue to take it in the west?
So we've got some expansion area west of Clairville.
Correct.
Okay, good, that's one question. And then, we had, as you know, we'd had this discussion about parks at the last couple of meetings. And I was utterly shocked. I know this is our ordinance, and so we have to cope with. But I was utterly shocked that the difference between the parkland area dedicated and the land that we would require will only require fees of $2,800, which is pathetic. That's awful. It's embarrassing. And so I'm using this as another opportunity to essentially push parks, planning, city council to update this ordinance so that the next time we have a subdivision come in, we've got more land. Even this, it look, evidently, we have 5% of this development as parkland. It would be approximately 1.7 acres. And this outlot is only 1.4 acres. So, that's pretty small. And I think we can see on the plat that that's not much land for that number of units. I don't know that I have another question for Ray right now, but I'll have more discussion later.
Anything else for Mr. Ed?
This sort of flip-flops kind of what you were looking at. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots on the east side between, what is that, Roberts Drive and Jimmy's Drive. Did you guys give any consideration to that? Sort of same concept, but controllable by the developer. It presumes that that lot to the east at some point develops, the one that's owned by First English, I think. It assumes that that develops, but we sort of make that assumption if we're arguing the same thing on the west side. I don't know if that's a viable location for the park or not. It doesn't solve the problem of not having it centrally located necessarily. It probably makes it worse. I just wasn't sure if it was anything you guys gave any consideration to.
I think we had some initial discussion at staff, and because the church owns that, we thought it might be less likely that it would be developed versus the going to the west.
Okay, that's fair.
Less likely developed as residential on the east, I believe.
Michael?
Yeah, the payment in lieu of, this is more a budgetary question, are those funds restricted, or where do they go?
Yeah, they go into a segregated fund for potentially future acquisition of additional parkland.
Okay. How much money is in that? Do you know? I know, sorry, don't mean to put you on the spot.
I don't have the number
About
offhand.
to be $2,800.
Yeah, I'm just curious if
And
there's
that's it.
actually any money in there. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, how does this park compare in acreage to other parks in Oshkosh? And what would be able to do with that type of park? What would its use be?
Yep, I brought my corp, which, just so that the Plan Commission knows, the Common Council did approve at their last meeting, so it is now official. But just to give you an idea, West Algoma Park, which is on Oshkosh Ave, by Pinoqua area, where we've got a marquee sign out there near Eaton's Pizza and so forth, that corner, that park is 1.8 acres. So this park would be smaller, just smaller than that. Give you an idea, just going up from there, Bauman Park, which is behind Hergert's, is about 2 acres. Fugelberg, obviously on the south side, South Main, 2.5 acres. And then one that many of you may know is Stegbauer, 6th and Idaho, is 1.87. So this one's smaller than that. But again, if we could see it grow in the future, just taking, for example, Stegbauer Park, that park has a youth baseball diamond, some play equipment, a basketball court that has additional amenities just based on the size of the facility.
Go ahead,
What is, just out of curiosity, the park on Congress across from the athletic field, it's a corner of, there's a little playground on the corner of,
Congress Avenue tot lot?
yeah, what is that?
0.45.
Yeah, I mean, that's tiny, but really serves that neighborhood well. It gets a lot of use from what I can tell. It's sort of near my house and we go there a lot, so. That's a decent size. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to understand the comparison.
How about Stevens Park?
Stevens Park is just over for, I believe, Stevens Park, 4.85, so just under 5.
Any other questions for the Parks guy? Thank you, sir. I have a question, and you brought it up. So Clairville Road, you said something about you anticipate Clairville Road being residential. Will there be a little element down there sometime?
Not like, well,
I can't remember. I
I
know
don't
we've
think
had
it's in the
discussions
plan. We
about
might
that.
have a commercial hamlet shown there. I'm not, at the corner of 9th and.
I believe there's a hamlet down, at the
Right at the,
intersection.
right at the intersection
Okay.
potentially, but, residential is probably gonna be the main use that's developed in that area, both sides of Clairville. All 4 sides, likely.
Right. Other technical questions? Yes, John.
Are there plans to expand 9th Street Road to 4 lanes all the way to Clearview? And is that-
Sometime after 2023, that's this area is part of the Zone C expansion area. And in 2023, on March 1st, all lands that aren't already in the city will be automatically attached. And then after that, the city would have the ability to construct a 4-lane street along there. And with both sides of the property being in the city would be able to assess for a special assessment or for the improvements.
We show it as an arterial in our comp plan.
Correct.
So there's plenty of space to have that happen even with the developments that are planned along here?
Along the north side, the plat includes a dedication to make West 9th Avenue 80 feet wide. There's a couple of pockets. Let me go back to the plat here. I believe there's a couple pockets along these areas which are along 9th Avenue, which are still in the town. So the city would have to acquire that additional 7 feet to get the full 40 feet on the north of the center line of 9th.
Unless there's a future land division, and then during the future land division, that's typically when we require the dedication.
Correct.
Mayor Cummings.
There's a section along 9th that says it's not part of this plat. How much acreage is there, and is that something that the city would want to acquire in the future for parkland with these funds that are obviously more than $2,800 or $2,400?
This is the landowner's personal house right here. I can't speak for him on what his future plans are. This lot is owned by one of the developers, and he just recently built a pole building out there. He's a contractor, so his intent is to utilize that land for more or less a contractor's type yard. And then lastly, this lot over here, this is owned by the landowner's brother, and I can't speak on what his long-term plans are.
I think Ray's preference is not to have one on 9th Avenue, is that it? You'd like to have it off of 9th, is that it?
I think that makes more sense. Obviously, being a 4-lane road, having kids playing along there, I think it's more centrally located away from those main roads, I think is a safer idea.
Ed?
So, and maybe would have been a technical question, I guess, but I don't think I understood this at the time. Sorry, that's not. Okay. You don't understand there. So we're approving the preliminary plat, but the portions of this covered by the future phases are not under the ownership of the party applying for the preliminary plat.
As of right now, when it came into the city, this is all entirely one parcel right now. They're currently going through a CSM review process with the town and county. I'm not sure where they're at with the final approval on that, but when it came into the city, this is all entirely one lot. Now, how they divvied up the interest between the property owners, that I'm not aware of.
So when we do a final plat, will the final plat be for all 61 lots? Or will the
No.
final plat be for,
Go back to the phase, it'll be phase 1.
it'll just be phase 1
Yeah.
that gets a final plat?
Everything in white here,
Okay.
everything grayed out.
Sorry, did I miss that in the staff report? Sorry.
The technical
If you may
requirements-
have said it, I just.
The technical requirements of the subdivision ordinance are that you show what you have some control over from a preliminary plat standpoint. So there's some control here. So we required the whole area to be preliminary platted. We couldn't go out to the next parcel because there wasn't control there. So, but we are setting up for that.
So just phase one will come through as a final plat.
It has to come back here.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so that'll come back as a final plat to be sort of given the green light to be legally subdivided into those
All this.
27 lot, whatever that number is. And then the preliminary plat will remain in place for the other future phases until a subsequent final plat comes
Correct.
through.
Correct.
Okay.
Sure, what
I was just trying to I guess I was trying to understand how
Because we do a plat once every blue moon around here anymore. It's
it has been a while since we've done one of these.
It's been a while, economy. But yeah, what the preliminary plat, what it does is sets up for, we give preliminary approval for the developer, whoever's going to develop it, to come back. They have some expectation once we get the preliminary plat approved that when they come back with final plats, we won't be radically changing that plat layout as they come back.
Yeah. Okay. I was just trying to understand it when there's sort of disparate ownership with it. I guess I was just trying to understand like logistically how that all was going to work. So I get it.
It's a lot nicer. It's a lot nicer too because we're able to plan out a lot larger area.
Other technical questions? We may have set a record for a number of technical questions. Okay, that's okay. All right, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Good afternoon, Commission. Grant Dukoch with Excel Engineering, here representing the client, KP Investments, and the owner and developer as well. So first off, I just want to touch on a few of the questions that were brought up in regards to the parkland. I can't speak on behalf of the owner, but I was part of a lot of the different proposals of development here for different layouts in the parkland. It's been really the biggest hurdle that we've been up against here for getting this to this point we are today. So first off, the developer, really they're taking on a large risk by dedicating a large parkland area in phase one. It's encompassing the entire plat, and they're doing that all in phase one. So given that, right off the bat, it's a large risk, it's a larger development, it's a large land area, and it's a lot of potential development money that they are putting on the table for development right away, which is a large burden for them. So a few comments that they asked me to just state on. I believe there's been some recent subdivisions, and by recent I don't mean the last year, the last few years, 10 years. Doesn't sound like there was, excuse me, I got a cold here from last week that I'm fighting on, but with that, recent development, doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of parkland that was dedicated in other areas of the city for residential subdivisions, making it a lot easier for other developers to develop because they're not losing that possible income, that possible revenue off of the parkland area. So it's just something to take in consideration when the Plan Commission's deciding on this. And really what it's coming down to is 5 lots. So the developer's losing, potential income off of 5 lots. Street frontage needs to be developed, completely developed. Utilities need to go in. All those different items cost a lot of money. It costs a lot of money for the developer, and by putting those in, they're seeing literally zero return on investment for that. So that's just one of the big items for the park. The developer has agreed to this location, has agreed to develop road frontage in phase 1 of the plat. And just moving forward, we can answer any questions that you have, but that's one of the main items. One of the reasons it doesn't work to the west is the way that they have an agreement made for the developers. There's different landowners. Yes, it's getting combined into one parcel, but as it develops, different landowners are going to see some of those returns on the lots that are being sold. And by pushing it into future phases, it doesn't work well, not knowing exactly how far those future phases are going to go, when they're going to go in the future. So the idea is that we keep it in phase 1, and then as we develop, the prorated income off of the lots gets split between the owners, that it doesn't get pushed into an unknown future phase. So with that, again, Grant from Excel Engineering. I forgot to state my address, 100 Camelot Drive in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin.
Okay, would you answer any questions if people have any?
Yeah, absolutely.
Folks, questions for gentlemen? Kath?
The owner's position is that he is, quote, losing 5 lots.
Mhm.
Well, I would like to say that he's not losing, I mean, he won't be putting homes on 5 lots, but if there is a park there, that's a huge draw.
Mhm.
So I think that will draw people to his development. Having a park there eventually will draw people to the development, and he will not lose money. I mean, initially, it's gonna cost him some money, but,
Mhm.
so I'd like to just offset that remark, that idea. Looking at this lot layout, ideally, if I had my druthers, I'd take out lot 5, and somehow, because it's left over,
Mhm.
I think that's what, from the road layout and everything you've got planned. Outlot 5, I think, should be combined with the park area somehow. And if the Parks Director is leaning toward another area in that 61 lot development, I would certainly support that. The equivalent of Outlot 5 added to this acreage that's being dedicated makes a better size park, I think. And it brings it up to a more reasonable level. Then you don't have to shell out, gosh, $2,800 for park fees, parkland dedication fees. But, and I shouldn't, I'm talking to you about this, and you're just the messenger.
Right, and
You're not the
and I
one that's
can
making
answer and
decisions.
respond.
And, but for the Plan Commission perspective, we've got 61 lots here, and we need to make this decision on the basis of this whole plat, this whole 61 lots. I'm sorry that the owners are not able to get together on this, evidently, but I think it's incumbent on the city to do that, and that's why we're discussing
Mhm.
the park issue, because it's really important. And doesn't have to develop right now, but it really needs to be part, I hope, from a Plan Commission standpoint, it'll be in a location that's best for the community, for the people that will live in that development, which would either be more centrally located, or I understand the point about the west side. I don't know that you are empowered to make any decisions about this. If we, the Plan Commission, decide that we're just not happy today, I don't know if we will decide that or not, but I think that's all I have to say right now.
Any other?
Yeah, and I can provide some feedback on that. Thank you for your comments. And as we've gone through this process, we actually did have the park laid out as a part of Outlot 5 originally, and wrapped it around the corner, met the square footage requirement per zoning ordinance, and that sliver of land was deemed to be unuseful by Parks and Zoning.
Yeah,
That
no,
they,
I see that
that they didn't,
sliver by
they
itself.
didn't want it. So we did try to incorporate that into a park, and they preferred it to not be a part of that outlot. That's why it's a separate outlot right now, so. And if there are specific questions back and forth, the owner and developer are here today, so if we do need to get into a discussion about, a give and a go, we can do that today.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the gentleman, as long as he's up here? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today?
I also think the other consideration is we also have a recommendation that we're kicking this over to the Parks Advisory Parks Board for review on it as well, aren't we, Ray?
Yes, we have a meeting next Monday. I was waiting to see what transpired tonight before I did go forward with it on the agenda, so I'm kind of waiting to see what Plan Commission feels this evening.
Steve, you have some thoughts for us?
Just one issue to point out with the kind of the small outlot 5, those individual lots can pose long-term problems for the city if they become essentially a defunct parcel with no one paying the taxes and maintaining. Then we have a lot of street frontage that cannot be, if it ends up going defaulted, the city ends up claiming it, we end up with a parcel that we cannot assess for the street frontage with these long, narrow street frontages. So one consideration may be to make sure that that is actually attached to one of the parcels, not that it is its own separate floating outlot that can be kind of an orphan parcel in 20, 30 years if someone does not want to maintain it.
So is that something you would ask the plan commission to do something about, or is that just a possibility
It's
somewhere along the line?
I don't know if
discussion?
it's with it being in the future phase, Darren. I'm not sure if it can be addressed in the future phase
now,
type
it's
of thing,
that,
or
right?
if it's okay at this point in time.
I think
just
we've started
kind
the
of-
discussion on that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Steve's absolutely correct. There's concern there. But there are other methods, like assigning it to a homeowners association, things like that, I think.
The homeowners associations can go defunct too, is the problem. We've run into another one, so.
Yeah. Thomas has a question?
Is that not part of the existing owner's land now?
Oh.
It is
yes.
part of their
Yeah.
land now.
But it's not part of
It's not-
phase one.
It's not part of, it's not part of phase one, correct.
Thomas?
So my suggestion would be look at actually curving Jason's place more into that vacant spot and then expanding the first two lots that come out of there. The curved road actually cuts down on the potential for speeding, especially as you're going into a subdivision. The curves are generally a design that a lot of municipalities use in subdivisions in order to cut down on that straight line drag race type of thing. So it appears in future planning that perhaps curving Jason's place a little bit might be beneficial, because you would get a couple of bigger lots, which of course would sell for more and then be taken care of.
Anyone else here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, man. Tell us what you think.
I am Sue Pickert. We live at 3490 West 9th. My husband and I own that parcel right next to that Outlot 5. We will not accept that Outlet 5 at any point in time. We already have a large lot. We don't want to have to maintain more. We don't want to berm. We already have almost, 2 acres of land now to mow and whatever. We do not want that ever. And as far as that little strip, it's 66 feet wide or 60 feet wide. What are you going to do with a strip like that in a park? So if you put the park in the 5 lots, which would go behind us, which would shift the park over to the left and then up the little strip, what are you going to put in that little strip just because you got the extra land to make you happy that you got the correct acreage?
Yeah, I think the
I
parks,
mean, it's-
parks
Oh,
people
that
already
was
weighed in
what I
on that.
Yeah, it's just
The
silly.
shape matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I mean, all it is just an empty strip now. So you go out there and you look and you think, what can we do with that? You can't hardly put a swing set, no sports can be played there. So where the park is now is ideal. You move it further west or to the left, what about all those people way back around Paul's place or street or whatever, in the future development, those back there? That's really far for them as well. And the parcel over there to the left that's owned by someone else is only 10 acres. So you tell that person when they come to develop or whatever, oh, we got to have some of your land to develop. 10 acres isn't much to develop in the first place. So she's just going to go ballistic on you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Good question, Kathy?
I just want to say that I did not mean that Outlot 5 itself should be converted to a park. I meant the
Oh,
equivalent.
no, you talked a bit.
The equivalent of that acreage. I would personally prefer that the 2 lots to the left of the green park,
Well,
or
I
the 1 lot or
misunderstood you then.
something.
I thought you were going to make the flip-flop.
No.
Over
no,
and then
no,
up.
No, 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 no.
It's not enough.
No, I just meant the equivalent acreage.
Okay. All right, I misunderstood you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope, that's
All right,
it.
thank you. Anyone else here to speak to this item? Nick, come on up, sir.
I'm Robert Pickard. I own that she was talking about. If you take the distance from the end of the park that's proposed right now and go all the way across to the lot line and go the other way, the distance is the same between going to the park on the west side as going to the park on the east side. So those people across the street from the park on the east side are going to have to walk just as far to the park on the west side as if you change it around, just for your information.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, seeing none, back to the commission.
I'd like just to echo what Kathy said about the park, and that it's not something that, currently we don't require that parkland be dedicated. You can do the payment in lieu of, but I think it's something that this commission and the city should look at as being a requirement, especially with a development this size and in areas where we don't have parks. We need to require that parkland be put into these developments and not make it an option for the developer. So, I fear that the parkland space in here is too small for all the area that we're talking about, including the development to the west eventually, or the church's property to the east. I do think it's too small of an area for a park, and I wish we could figure out some kind of way to make that at least equal to what they're supposed to give up acreage-wise, or larger. So,
Thank you. Kathy, you had your hand up? No?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did. I guess it's obvious I'm not happy. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions and issues that still remain, one of which evidently is this Outlot 5. And I did not mean that literally should be the park. I meant the equivalent acreage. So I don't know what the solution is to our problem, because I'm inclined to vote no right now, or to lay it over. And I understand the staff and developers have been working hard on this and haven't been able to reach a really satisfactory resolution from a city's point of view. But I'd like to see the park location moved closer to where the parks director would like it. If that's not possible, but I'm not happy.
Okay.
I also think that's one of the reasons why we put that condition on here is to kick it over to Ray and the Advisory Parks Board to see if there needs to be some other discussion, because we really need to involve them as well. Sure. In these discussions, that's why we put it in.
It sounds like Ray's here partly to get a sense of what this group, no matter how we vote, you're hearing the discussions, so you can inform your folks. Ed?
And this is, I guess, just because I'm hearing folks talk about it a little bit here, this Outlot 5, that I agree is a little, I don't understand why Outlot 5 exists. But I do think that there are some options for it, I guess. What are we saddled with if we approve this as is? Because we are approving, and that's why I go back to this sort of logistics of this. We are approving a preliminary plat for the entire area.
Correct.
I understand that the final plat will come through for phase 1 only, and will create those sort of legally described parcels that can be conveyed. So that's what we're working towards. How does that impact what we are then bound to approve for Outlot 5 when it comes through for a final plat for phase 2? And that could be in 10 years. None of us may be here when that happens. I don't know what the absorption of subdivision lots this far west of town is going to be. I have no clue. Could be next year. I have no idea. So I guess, Darren, when you're looking at this as the people that are going to have to make a recommendation to this board, do you see yourself having the ability to solve the Outlot 5 problem, the Outlot 5 conundrum, in the interim, if we approve this preliminary plat as is? Either the way that Steve talked about it, the way that Tom is sort of suggesting maybe we rework the drive. I guess there's some ways to solve it. Are you hamstrung by us approving this as is with a lot in it that we just don't like?
I think we have to come up, Outlot 5, it doesn't describe what the outlot is for. generally you should have what the description is for, so we don't have a descriptor on there of it. It's not buildable, but it's not outlot. Outlot's usually used for for some purpose.
Yeah.
Right now, that outlot is green space. It's not city green space. It would end up being subdivision green space. I think the issue is what Steve had raised, and I think we'd have to deal with that with a development agreement, and we've done it with stormwater ponds, where we've come up with a way to assess everybody in that plat should we have to take care of it. So I think that's, right, Steve? I mean, you've seen us do that before with some of the, it's not the preferred way of doing things, but I think with a development agreement, we can put we can cloud all those, although not cloud them, but we can put something on all the titles in the subdivision that if something goes bad and we have to take care of it, we can bill that back to all the owners.
The only issue we've recently had is one of the developers' agreements where the developer actually filed for bankruptcy, voided the developer's agreement as a result. So then we lost that ability. So every time we seem to find there are holes in some of the manners that we try to develop.
We just have to figure out how to not create that hole, but it's a legal instrument. So I think that's something we'd have to have a discussion with the attorney's office as part of the process as it moves forward. I think the condition here we'd say is the outlot number 5 is to be
If it's
dedicated.
161st dedicated part of all the lots and they all have a 161st ownership in it, if it's a separate recorded document or deed. So
Yeah, outlot 5 is a subdivision lot for, something like, we can put some language on it. Because for right now, because it's going to come back as a final plat, and if they do something, maybe they alter it a little bit to do what Tom had said, and maybe we do something where we do, put a curve in there or something like that. There's still the ability to do that. They come back with a final plat that adjusts, like Mr. Perry had talked about, maybe that makes outlot 5 go away. So I think we have two things going forward in the future. You could handle it that way, or just put a condition on outlot 5 is to be a subdivision outlot.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, is it, do we need to put a condition on, suggesting that outlot 5 be addressed
I think
in some way between now and final? I mean, I'm open to a lot of different ways to deal with it, I suppose, and most, I guess, impactfully how it sort of functions within the development, which is why I kind of like the idea of curving a street through there a little bit. But I don't know. I have no clue. That's going to be it.
We haven't designed it to make.
I don't
sure
design
that-
subdivisions. I have no idea. So that's up to you guys.
So we have to take a look at that. So we could put.
I'm just thinking again because we tend to have these we're still looking at final plats from things we did preliminary plats for in 2003. So I am wondering if it doesn't make some sense to at least sort of put it on the record that there was a concern regarding outlot 5 and that there should be some method of addressing outlot 5 to make it a more functional part of the development, or at least tied to the development more than it's just there on an island.
Let me work on that while you go to other conversation here.
I have no other conversation.
I'll come up with the condition.
Steve had a hand up and then Kathy, I believe.
One question, this maybe is for Steve Godey. If memory serves me, I think it does, this corner, I recall in the past, this area had some severe flooding during storms. This is, I think it's been going over Clearwater Road, this whole area is underwater. Will that 3+ acres for the pond solve some of that problem?
The detention basin that's being designed for the subdivision is only for the subdivision water. It's not for the water coming from other areas that have historically caused problems in their area. I believe a lot of the flooding in that area has been to the southeast of this, to the east of Linden Oaks Drive, and to the south there's been some issues there. Jeff's bringing it up on the screen a little bit better so you can see it. So I think on the south side and east there, kind of where the SR of the SR5 is in that green block, a little farther to the right and down, that area's had some flooding. The area that's blue to the north of subdivision is all wetlands up through there, and there's a pretty good drainage system. Right now, this is a heavily drain tiled and dewatered area. That is one of the issues that we're working with the developer on, is they actually have a pump that pumps water out of the area with the drain tiles, and there's several easements through there, so we have to address that with the developer to try to make sure that those are all plugged and we don't have drain tiles connected to any of the foundations through the area, and that there aren't creating issues and that the other properties that have those easement rights have released those through that area.
Kathy?
Evidently, my tired eyes aren't reading this correctly, but it looks like the lot immediately to the left of the proposed park is 168. That can't be right.
That's a misnumbering.
That's a misnumbering. So anyway, that lot, if that were combined, if the park stays at the current location, it would be nice to have that lot, part of this phase one, become public park. And then they're they don't need to
Solve a lot of problems.
give us $2,800 whole dollars. And our park's a little slightly larger. So I just suggest that, and I know that suggestion isn't gonna go anywhere today because it takes more discussion. The Outlot 5, I hope that legally we won't be hamstrung by approving, if we approve this, thinking that we might have a curved road, and then the developers come back in 5-10 years and say, well, your preliminary plat said differently.
Sure, we've come up with conditions, so.
You would have the city has the flexibility or the ability to say, we don't like that, suddenly we'd rather have a curved road. It makes huge lots for them.
We can have that discussion. We were, Mark
Okay.
and I were just discussing a condition that would address
Okay.
some of those concerns.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other folks? Thomas?
Oh, I was ready to move, so.
All right, he's moving. Approval?
With conditions that Darren is.
Once we get to hear it, once he unveils his condition,
Whatever, we trust his.
I'd really like to hear it.
All right, so we
I-
do this, I'm doing this on the fly.
Yes.
So outlet number 5 be classified as a subdivision outlot to be cared for and maintained by the lot owners in the overall subdivision, we'll say that. Or removed during the final plan, process. That gives them the option, we're saying, you're either as a subdivision, we give them two options. They're either going to, this is going to be their responsibility, and we're going to figure out legally how to make that work. And we've done it before, but Steve says, yeah, there are holes with that issue. Sorry. Turned off. So Steve said there are some issues with that, so legally we'll work on that a little bit. I think we can develop a mechanism for that. Or you come back and that outlot's not on your final plat. That way we've now provided the notice to the future phases. What's going to happen? It's going to be an either or thing, depending, if they come back and the road design is so it doesn't work, and then it's going to be green space or something else. Now, it's not uncommon. You see this in subdivisions. You see small little bits of subdivision, green space,
Right.
all over the community. We can do it here, just as long as we can figure out legally how to make it work.
Is that acceptable?
That's what I said.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a
Fewer
second
words.
to that motion? Anybody want to second that?
No, I'll second.
Ed seconds it. Okay, discussion on the motion.
I just think we're going through a lot of hoops to take care of 0.3 acres. This land is owned by the people that are living along this area now, these developers. Let's just make it part of their land. Don't have an outlot. Have it part of their land and be done with it. And don't go through all these hoops and having all these turn roads, which you're gonna have issues with. I don't know how you're gonna be able to do that and still be able to keep lot 24 the way it is. I just don't think it's worth all the effort to go through all that and make all those changes when we should just include it as part of their property now. It should remain part of their property. It's farmed now, I'm sure, but it's still part of their property.
So I agree in theory with your statement. However, the abutting property owner has already said that they don't want anything to do with that lot.
And
that doesn't
I
mean
think
down the road things can't change. I mean, this outlot at some point, owners change, things change. Somebody sells that, they could potentially buy this and now you have another additional couple of lots out of there, depending on how you orient it, you have maybe 2-3 lots out of that. So that's potential too.
And if I understand from the bunch of things that I've heard here, it's for lack of anything else on here, it's that the owner of the pink piece is not the same owner as the gray piece. So essentially, we'd be forcing a combination of ownership that is not the same owner. Yes, is that accurate?
My understanding.
Is that accurate?
That's-
Okay. Okay.
All right, yes, Michael.
Just real quick, I mean, we are an advisory
Alright.
commission, and since this is gonna go to the Parks Board next, it's worth, I think, restating, I think Kathy stated this well, that the current ordinance dealing with payments in lieu of parkland, is inadequate and outdated, and
With that said, and not, we belabored this enough. With that said, because they did raise the issue of, hey, there are other developers who haven't had to do this, and you know what? That's true. But this is our ordinance, and we are finally administering our ordinance the way it is meant to be administered. It is, as I agree with all of you, woefully deficient. Whether we're talking about land or fees in lieu, but we are, as I remember from our last workshop here, we are updating that. We're talking about sort of bringing it into the new millennia, I suppose. But, it is nice that we are finally following our own rules. Whether or not that's something that the developer is happy about, it is the rule. So I'm inclined to support it. I don't love the location of the park either. I not simply because I don't like where it is within the development. I think I like the concept that Ray has of, let's put this adjacent to something else so that when the next thing develops, we get more bang for our buck. We can put it against that property line when the other person develops, and they're obligated to follow the rule the same way this person is, and they have to dedicate that park line. Now we have 3.5 acres or 3.2 acres or whatever it is. But this is a start.
Progress.
We're making progress. We're doing better than we did. So I think I'm inclined to support as presented, warts and all.
And, we have been a little bit more aggressive. There was those years where we didn't take, we always took the money. We always took the money
Right.
years ago in the 2000s. Things have changed, and we have been more aggressive in taking parkland. So if you look at the Gabbard Roof subdivision on the north side, we required a large dedication of a park up there. Sunrise Estates, I think we looked at it. We didn't think we needed it right at that location. So it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and whether Ripple in Oregon, we got several acres down there. So yes, we're requiring the dedication of more and more lands as we're moving forward. In the past, we didn't do it as much, but
Kathy?
I still need to vote no, because I want to give the park board an opportunity to weigh in on this, and I don't want them to think that we think this is a done deal, even though if it goes through, it looks like it is. So I would prefer, I'm delighted to see there's some parkland dedicated. I wish the Phantom Lot 168, whatever it is, could be included, the one just to the left of the green area. So I'm going to vote no, hoping that the Parks Board will weigh in on this, and if necessary, we'll have to have more discussions with the developer.
All right, it's been moved and seconded and discussed. Are we ready to vote? Looks that way. Let's do it.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
I,
Kiefer,
no.
Perry,
Aye.
Prop,
No?
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-2.
Okay, moving on, item number 4A. Do you want to do these together or apart? Do you have a preference, Mark?
We'll do one big discussion, separate vote.
One big discussion, separate vote, okay. 4A, specific implementation plan approval for global corporate headquarters at 2175 Pinoca Street, and 4B, access control variances to allow increased driveway entrance width and curb cut width at 2175 Pinoca.
All right, so we're back again with the Oshkosh Corp Global Headquarters site, this time moving on to our specific implementation plan.
It's more years than meetings.
Huh?
Sorry.
So, the early part of this will move through quickly because not that much has significantly changed from the general development plan, but we do want to highlight a number of things. So the site is designed to contribute a number of indoor-outdoor activity spaces, both the building, the parking, and some other activity outdoor spaces. Some of those things are a large hardscape plaza in front of the building. If I can get this mouse to work. There's a large hardscape plaza kind of out here, along with some landform green space areas in front of the parking. We have some outdoor plaza spaces for the use of the employees kind of here on the north, as well as on the east is the building actually overhangs it, so you have a bit of a covered outdoor space. Then kind of one of the elements we discussed last meeting was some of these outdoor vehicle display areas, but we'll get into those a lot further. The plan does continue to include that Gabion wall that we discussed. It kind of sets up the landform features. There is basically one approximately here and here. They're basically used as retaining walls for the facility. Some more examples of that Gabion wall are on the material board that I'm going to show you, and the applicant has brought forward with them another version of that material board so you can kind of see in person what these materials are looking like. Moving on to the landscaping plan of the site. So this, you can see, it is a pretty extensively landscaped facility. I'm going to break down the landscaping into the sections of our ordinance one at a time. But first I wanted to give you kind of a general overall scale of it. And then, like I said, we will get into a specific discussion related to the outdoor vehicle display. So kind of zooming in a little bit, this is the area right immediately adjacent to the building. So we have some kind of landscape features to the north. This is that patio with some landscaping around it, a fair amount of landscaping in front of the building. This is the west side of the building. So there's a pretty well landscaped site. As we're going to discuss further in this is their dumpster location. They are requesting a base standard modification for this, but we'll get into the specifics of it a little bit later. This is just a shot of their parking, the western parking area. As you can see, pretty intensively landscaped. This is one of their vehicle display locations. This is kind of that center island between their large parking areas. Moving over to the eastern side of the parking area, again, very well landscaped. Southern portion of the site, this is getting down towards where the guardhouse will be. The applicant has not finalized any elevations. They don't know exactly what this guardhouse is going to be. We are going to recommend a condition that guardhouse, as elevations are finalized, it be brought back to this body and council as an amendment. We have that code requirement within our new corporate business park district that it has to be very complementary to the primary building. But they haven't finalized that, so we'll bring that back forward at another date once they get there. As for the access control variance, we will discuss that a little greater in detail, but basically the way this property sets up with the driveway hooking into a curved road, although that curved road has a squared off right-of-way, leads to a rather large drive access compared to what we would traditionally see. In a future slide, we have a little better shot of it, but I just wanted to kind of show you up front that is where that access control variance will come into play. Here we do have the building elevation, so start to get into a little bit of some specifics. I'm going to kind of go back and forth here. So the applicant is seeking a single access point that is approximately 51 feet wide at the property line. It includes two outbound lanes for traffic, a single inbound lane for traffic. Approximately 667 parking spaces are shown on the site plan. They're only required 630 spaces. They do exceed their maximum or their minimum required parking, but they do not exceed their maximum. So they fall right in line with what they're required. Stormwater management plans are still being finalized. They have provided some preliminary plans that the Department of Public Works is reviewing, and they are generally in conformance with what we need. But with the unique nature of this site and how stormwater is being managed here, they're continuing working with the city on the finalized version of those plans. Those finalized plans will need to be submitted as their part of their site plan review process. The applicant is intending to file that tomorrow with our department. So all this just considers conceptuals. Their final detail are being finalized with the city, and those will be worked out. And I'm going to back up here and start talking about some landscaping. So the applicant is required 452 points of foundation landscaping based on the size and scale of this building. The applicant's plan includes a total of 746 foundation landscaping points, so they far exceed that requirement. In conjunction with this, we require 50% of the total required points be provided along the primary building facade, so in this case, the south facade of the building. The applicant's providing 291 on that facade, again exceeding the minimum code requirement. Next, we get to paved area landscaping within our ordinance. That's the wrong way. Applicant is required a certain amount of landscaping points, in this case 50 per 10 parking spaces or 10,000 square feet of paved area. That equates to a landscaping requirement of 3,305 landscaping points. The applicant is providing almost 20,000. So they're far exceeding their minimum landscaping requirements for the hard surfaced area of this site. Third, the applicant is required under ordinance street frontage landscaping. Due to the unique configuration of this lot, we literally only have 80 feet of right-of-way width. So the applicant's required 100 landscaping points per 100 feet of frontage. So in this case, they would need 80 landscaping points. The roadway takes up approximately 51 feet, leaving them about 11 feet on the south and 14 feet on the north. That southern portion is mainly made up of their sidewalks. There's no real opportunity to put landscaping there. And on the north, the way the road kind of angles north, you have a very small area to put landscaping. Our our street frontage landscaping says that landscaping to be counted as street frontage must have a drip line within 10 feet of the right-of-way line. Just feasibly is not room for that. The applicant has added trees as close as they can to that requirement, but they are unable to meet it. So staff is recommending that a base standard be granted because it just, with the unique configuration of this lot, it's not feasible to meet that street frontage landscaping. Kind of in conjunction with that, we have a yard landscaping requirement. Our yard landscaping requirement is based on the size of your development. The applicant is required 3,800 landscaping points for yard landscaping. When we did the corporate business park zoning district, we wanted to push some of that general yard landscaping to the street frontages to make sure we had a really nicely buffered street. Again, with the unique situation of this parcel, there's no room to put 1,600 landscaping points within 10 feet of that road. So they're requesting a base standard modification from the location of that yard landscaping. They still will be providing almost 4,800 of total yard landscaping, which is above and beyond their requirement. They just can't meet that location that says you have to put a bunch along your street frontage. So staff does, again, recommend approval of that base standard because it is a uniquely configured lot. Finally, for landscaping, the applicant is requesting a base standard modification from the buffer yard requirement. This requirement kicks in when you have zoning districts of the adjacent property that are different from your own. In the corporate business park to the institutional parkland, you would be required a 0.4 opacity buffer yard. That is generally described as a berm with landscaping on top of it. The applicant would like to, instead of having to remove the existing vegetation around the exterior of the site just to grade a berm up and put the landscaping back on it, leave that landscaping as it exists today, and then infill around it to achieve a similar look, but without having to have the berm. Staff's opinion, they're really trying to blend in the exterior of their site with the surrounding parkland, and it makes more sense to grant a base standard to allow them to avoid having to do that berm. The applicant has not finalized any sign package at this time, so similar to the guardhouse, the staff is recommending that when they finalize those sign plans, they bring them back forward to this commission and council for approval as an amendment to the approved plan. A photometric plan has been provided by the applicant, and it is in conformance with the lighting standards within the ordinance. Now, moving on to building facades. So under the corporate business park zoning district, we require that all sides of a building be clad in 75% class 1 materials. Overall building is 77.43% class 1 materials and 22.57 class 3 materials. So their overall building meets that intended goal. However, each facade is what is required per the ordinance. Their south, west, and east facades all exceed the 75% requirement. The north facade, however, does not. It is 72% Class 1 as defined by our ordinance. Now, the applicant in this situation is using a very high-end metal panel that they feel, although it does not classify as a Class 1 material, meets the intent of that. I've added in the staff report for you their written description of it, and they're going to discuss that a little further with you. Staff's opinion is that's really a broad discussion that this commission needs to have with the applicant. Are they okay with 72% along that north facade, or would they like to see some of that metal panel removed and changed out for additional brick? The applicant feels they've really meet the intent of what we were going for when we set that requirement, and feels that the 72% meets that goal. But the applicant's going to have that discussion with you tonight, and it'll be up to this commission to decide if they want to grant a base standard modification for 72% on the north facade. Within our corporate business park zoning district, we also put in a requirement of no more than 40 feet without facade articulation. When we wrote that, we were envisioning more of the retail commercial buildings and how they articulate. When you get to a building of this scale and magnitude, it becomes a little bit trickier. They meet it on kind of the ends and the front of the building, where they don't meet that facade articulation on the back, where they have some large glass office areas. So this facade of the building, yes, has kind of some expanses here and here that don't have vertical articulation. They have a lot of horizontal roofline changes, but they don't meet the exact definition of what we wrote. Again, their building meets what we were going for, the way it steps kind of in and out horizontally, but doesn't have the vertical articulation that we put in the ordinance. So they are requesting a base standard modification for that. Staff does support it. The way this building is designed really meets what we were going for when we put that in. Just when you get to a building of 190,000 square feet versus 20,000 square feet like we would traditionally see, it's a little harder to achieve that exact requirement. We did add the building composition requirement. The building has a unique base, middle, top. Staff believes the applicant has met that requirement as it is broken up into those different planes. We did touch on the guard shack already, so I'll skip over that. The final thing is the refuge enclosure. So under the strict application of the ordinance, you have to have screening via a fence immediately around your trash enclosure. In this instance, the way the applicant has developed their site, this trash enclosure area is screened on the north by a retaining wall and kind of some raised elevation and landscaping. On the south, same thing. You have kind of an elevation change where these landforms exist that you can't see that area. And opposed to putting a gate basically just in front of it that doesn't serve a whole lot of purpose, the applicant's requesting to be able to, on the extreme west portion of the site, berm up the area and add additional landscaping that would make it so if you were on the adjacent parkland, you wouldn't be able to see into where that trash enclosure is anyways. Staff feels in this situation it is a unique characteristic of the site, and they're meeting the goal of why we require trash enclosures. And they do have a elevation view, we'll get to it in a little bit, that shows that elevation, and that you really can't see where those trash enclosures are going to be. Oh, there we go. And finally, let's talk about the vehicle display areas. So here, kind of their material board. You can see kind of this gabion wall that they would like to do. In this picture, it's kind of right here. It does have that, for lack of a better term, mesh around the outside that is then filled with rocks, and then would have some sort of, I don't know if they're doing sandstone, or they do have a stone cap kind of on the top of it, so you could actually sit on the wall. Then we have some Fond du Lac stone that makes up a large portion of the building. That's one of the Class 1 materials. They have their, a lot of glass on this, which is a vast majority of where their Class 1 materials come in. And then they have this metal composite portion that's kind of this black areas you see. It's a high-end architectural metal panel. That is what, under the strict definition of our ordinance, is a Class 3 material. But we'll have the applicant explain a little bit more about that. So here are those views I discussed a little bit to kind of show some where the vehicle display areas are. This is the one that's kind of in the island as you approach, with parking to the east and west, as well as then kind of that large plaza area in the front of the building. This is the vehicle display area that's shown at the northwest corner. This is that berm that we discussed that kind of shields the trash enclosure areas. Those trash enclosures are kind of down here, and that they're kind of bermed and landscaped where they're out of view. So the applicant has indicated 5 possible areas for outdoor vehicle display. And here are those 5 areas. One to the northeast corner, that's kind of under the roof line of the building, but it is a paved area that vehicle display could take place. Kind of to the northwest corner here is kind of that V shape you saw in the initial site plan where vehicles could be placed. Then you have the land forms and large plaza area in front of the building. You have kind of this central plaza that separates the parking areas. And finally, a single area in kind of the entrance to the facility. The applicant has indicated that the total area could accommodate about 13 vehicles at any one time, and has requested, I should say, could accommodate about 13 vehicles at maximum, and is requested to be allowed a maximum of 10 vehicles at one time. Staff feels 10 is a little high and is recommending that a condition be placed to allow a maximum of 5 vehicles, essentially 1 per area. But further denotes that we understand with the applicant does want to have some flexibilities based on clients and use of where these vehicles may take place. Staff is not overly concerned with these vehicle display areas kind of in front of the building and in front of kind of breaking up their parking area. The main concern staff has, what could you see from the street? And that is these areas that are listed as areas 4, 5, and 1. It's staff's recommendation that we condition it to say you can have a maximum of 3 vehicles displayed from the public view between those 3 areas at any one time. If they wanted to have none there and put all 5 in the centralized location of the site, go for it, but we wouldn't want to see any more than 3 on the exterior of the site that could be viewed from the public right away. A base standard modification does need to be approved to allow any vehicle display areas, period, as the corporate business park zoning district strictly prohibits that type of use. Now, when we chose to prohibit that type of use, this wasn't really what we were intending to prohibit. The thing was more of, gas stations with their pallets of things for sale, and that was what we wanted to prohibit with outdoor display and sales. This is a little more of a unique application of that. So, staff is recommending approval of specific implementation plan with the findings listed within the staff report and the following conditions. So first, that a base standard modification to allow outdoor vehicle display subject to these conditions within that. Maximum of 5 vehicles displayed at any one time, with only 3 vehicles within the public view defined as areas 1, 4, and 5 as attached on their plans. Additional shrubs or perennial plantings be placed along the west, north, and south side of vehicle display area 4, and we'll go back so I can show you that a little bit. Additional shrubs and perennial plantings be provided along the north side of vehicle area 5, and actually I think this should say northeast and west, not south. Vehicle in front of vehicle display area 2 shall include some tall or median shrubs to aid in softening the appearance of that vehicle display area. And then finally, that a final landscaping plan for vehicle display area shall be approved by staff. So kind of go back here to some of the landscape plans. So they're showing some shrubbery here along where a main ID sign may take place, and then you would have vehicle display kind of behind it. Item, let's see, D within those conditions is basically requesting that instead of these being all just low flowers, we have a little bit of a taller shrubs in that area to just soften that if a vehicle is there. Most of these vehicles are larger in nature, so if we have maybe 3-foot shrubs in that area, we're not going to block the vehicle. Their clients and their employees are still going to prominently see them, but it will soften the look of them a little bit. Their landscape plan presently does not show any landscaping kind of on the north side of this vehicle display area. And that is where condition C, which is recommended, kind of wrap this landscape area around. Again, just soften the look of where that vehicle display area is. And then same thing here. This is item C. Just do some additional plantings around. Right now, no landscaping is shown around this vehicle display area. Again, some shrub, flower planting areas just to soften that look of the vehicle display area. Dress it up a little bit so as you're viewing it from the public right away, it looks a little nicer. Condition number 2 is approval of the access control variance for a 51-foot opening at the right-of-way line and 46 at the curb. We'll handle that as part of the next item, but I did want to condition your approval here. Condition number 3, base area modification from the required street frontage landscaping to no street frontage landscaping. That's where we talked, it's just a unique site with only an 80-foot right-of-way. Item 4, base area modification from the required 50% of yard landscaping points devoted to street frontage to no yard landscaping along the street frontage. We're going to still require them to do the maximum number of points, but again, it's just a little tricky trying to accommodate them at the property line. Next item, final signage plans be brought back through the Plan Commission and Common Council for approval as a plan development amendment. Base standard modification to allow the facades to exceed that 40 feet without articulation. Final guard check plans to be required to be brought back to the Plan Commission and Council for approval as a plan development amendment. Base standard modification to allow the berm and landscaping in lieu of that solid enclosure for the dumpster enclosure area. And then item 10 of our requirements is kind of the one that the additional discussion needs to take place between the Plan Commission and the applicant to determine is 72% required for that north facade sufficient. If Plan Commission does ultimately decide that isn't acceptable for that north facade, a base standard modification would need to be granted for that.
That it?
That's it.
Okay, technical questions on 4A. Start with Tom and then Mr. Mayor.
So they are, we're requesting 13 vehicles, up to 13
So
vehicles?
their request is that they could accommodate a total of 13 at maximum occupancy, and then their request is to have no more than 10 at any single time.
So would it be worthwhile to allow that to occur and write it in 12 business days a year, 10 business days a year, something like that, so that when they have a whole bunch of people coming at a big time, that they can put out the whole shebang?
Yep. I think the applicant's going to suggest that. I would say they shot high, we shot low, ultimately both understanding there's going to be some discussion with this group of, let's find a number that works for everybody.
Is 12 allows for one day a month, or maybe they're having 52 countries coming in for
Yep.
12 days in a row?
I think staff fully understands there's some additional discussion we can definitely land on, probably works best for the applicant.
Steve?
I would agree there has to be flexibility. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar vehicles, and I think it's as much a source of pride for the employees. This is what we've designed and built as it is for potential customers, the community. If anyone's been to Kohler, they've done a heck of a job with the museum on toilets. These are far from toilets. These are multi-million-dollar.
So there will be no giant toilets sitting outside in the display?
That's not in the business plan. I think
Alright.
it's impressive seeing what Pierce puts out on
Yeah, I
occasion.
always like what Pierce does.
And I think this is a source of community pride that we have to have flexibility depending on the event, the function, that type of thing.
And I think that's where staff is really less concerned with the exact number of vehicles. And really, let's make sure, at least from the public right away, we put a little bit of limitation in there just so we don't end up with a bunch of vehicles parked along the Riverwalk.
It's not a used car lot, and I think as people approach it, they've heard of Oshkosh Corp., but if they don't quite know what Oshkosh Corp. makes, and most of us didn't until the parade in June, that's a very, very extensive line of products. I think it's an educational tool for the community and visitors, so.
Back to Tom.
So if you were going to present to us what you thought might be a recommendation, how many days would that be?
Hi, David Pano with Trammell Crow Chicago Development, here on behalf of the applicant and Oshkosh Corporation. Initially, as Mark kind of said, maybe we shot a little high, staff shot a little low, and perhaps somewhere in the middle might ultimately satisfy both goals. Aiming high was an effort to be simple, so certainly can kind of warrant some of this discussion to see what makes the most sense. I guess just kind of as an introduction, we agree with really all the stipulations kind of around that, with maximum of 3 at the more kind of public facing locations. So it's really just that quantity that we'd even be here tonight to discuss with you. I think that it's probably limited to a handful of times a year, and certainly could be of perhaps a 5-day duration, because it would probably be for an event. Maybe that's events a couple days, maybe there's a day or 2 on the setup or takedown at the front end and back end of that event. Probably a handful of times, maybe 5 times a year might be an appropriate time. Alternatively, if we were beyond the 5 that staff recommended, as Mark I think alluded to, they really would be at those inward facing 2 locations at the kind of what I'll call the boulevard area there, as well as the main plaza. If 10 were deemed too much, if 8 were appropriate, I think that would be certainly palatable for Oshkosh Corporation. But alternatively, if somewhere between 5 to 10 on specific occasions, I think there's something workable there as well. I don't know if there's a strong opinion one way or the other. It was mentioned the value of the.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah.
Kathy?
I was just going to weigh in on this topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think I just heard you say that you would agree, or you would go along with the staff recommendation that on the 3 locations which are most public,
Yep.
most visible, that there's just 1 vehicle
Correct.
per location.
Correct. Yeah, 3 max at any given
What we're talking
time.
about, what we're discussing is this center area in front of the building where the parking is.
Correct. Yep.
There might be more vehicles.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
All right, we'll get back to you when we're
Perfect.
done with technical
Thank you.
questions. Other technical questions? Go ahead.
I would just like to say there has to be some flexibility. This is a company that's trying to
Sure.
grow, bring in other business, bidding on other projects. I mean, they may have 13 product lines right now, but hopefully in 5 years they have 20, 25. So we really do have to look at some flexibility.
Thank you. There's none. Any guys got anything else to say today? Or anybody else from the public have something to say regarding this?
We were still in technical comments.
Oh,
We want to know,
pardon me?
We were still in
talk about the
technical
materials.
questions.
Yeah, I said, do we have any more technical questions? I already asked that. Any more technical questions? All right. Anybody have something, anybody in the public have anything to say on this topic?
You have the material board.
Yes,
Yeah, well,
material board.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Show and tell.
We did bring a material board, and certainly, any dialogue or questions that come up, glad to speak to those. We have some 2 glazing sample there, Ryan, if you want to.
Yeah, what we're showing on the board right now is one of the glass types that we're looking at right now. There's black and white behind it. Black is kind of what the glass would look like from the outside. If you're on the inside looking out, that's the reason for the white. Fond du Lac stone of different sizes, different bed faces would be showing. And then we're showing the metal panel that we're proposing on the building, and then we've got some underside metal panel. It doesn't show up on the renderings because it's on the underside of the canopies as you're walking in. So that would be a metal panel as well, but it would be a wood look. So that's what we're showing on the palette here, which is consistent with what was the digital one that we shared.
Can you discuss a little bit more about the type of metal panel and
Sure.
what's going on with that? Because I think that's an important element here.
The metal panel is a metal composite material, which means that it's produced by taking coil metal that's pre-finished, and then it's bonded to a polypropylene core, and then there's another piece of metal bonded on the backside. It's not a glue that keeps it together, it's the heat and the pressure that keeps it all together so it doesn't delaminate. The finish warranties on this are 20 to 30 years depending on which finish is done. I think the one that we're showing here has a direct 20-year finish, and that's by manufacturer and by product line the way it is. And and then the way it's produced and put on the building, if you've ever driven past like an Acura car dealership, for example, the little Acura sign that they have out in front of the door, that's a metal panel that's been bent. It's kind of faceted. Not exactly the way we're proposing on this building, but you get a good feeling of it. So what we're doing is we're really taking the side of the building with the metal panels, and we're turning it so that part of the panel is shade, part of the panel is light, and it's what's giving it the dynamic kind of uplift that you see on the outside. If that was all flat or if that was stone, the building would have a very much different character. So the way it's paired right now is if there's glass, then there's the metal panel. If there's stone, there's no glass in the stone. So when we talk a little bit about that north elevation with all the best views for the employees inside the building, but also going back to the clarity of the glass, and what we're showing is you will see structure on the inside of the building. We've got these big chevrons towards the outside face of the glass. You'll see that through this glass very distinctly during the day, also at night. But Oshkosh was asking for the transparency, both from the inside to the outside, and for the community walking past to be able to look in and kind of see, oh, this is what these guys are doing here. So on the north side, that's why we've always paired metal with glass, or if it's stone, it's just solid stone, not in between the glass. And that's what's giving those uplifts to the side that you get the feeling from in the renders right now.
One of the things that you can't fully appreciate on the flat sample, which is just a stock sample, is how this material will be bent and fabricated. Part of what makes it a desirable material for this type of quality of a building is the crisp lines that you can achieve with it. It doesn't oil can or kind of get that wrinkly look, so to speak, of some kind of thinner materials or like a flashing sometimes that you'll see. That's what the core does, gives it that rigidity to really give you that crisp line, and that's how we're able to achieve how that banding, that's a gentle curve at each floor line. So that's what Ryan was describing with the different planes of light, to where you see in that rendering, that's all one color, but it'll act differently. That's really intentional to show the movement, because Oshkosh makes things that move. And so that's a big design intent of how that can be achieved with that product.
One of the other characteristics of the piece of material that you're looking at here is you see that it's not very reflective. So one of the things that we're looking at is, when we were evaluating the class 1 and class 3 or even 2 materials, is a lot of the class 1s, stone, brick, they don't really reflect a lot of light. So we thought, okay, what if our metal panel was less reflective than what you normally see as a metal panel? Kind of goes back to this. It also, if you think of like a JLTV or something where they've got the desert tan on it or something, that doesn't reflect a lot of light, like your shiny car does. So that's another aspect that we're looking at with the metal panel. If we use something that has less reflectance of it, we've got a lot of reflections on the glass. It'll reflect the sky, it'll reflect the ground, the lake, but then the metal offsets that just as brick would, as stone would. Exactly, contrast. So that's another consideration.
Part of what Ryan was describing on the north elevation with kind of that uplift and to kind of make the building feel a little bit lighter, so to speak. I know we are, as Mark described, requesting a standard modification to the north elevation. That's, I guess I'd say, very intentional. We certainly looked at other ways and moving some materials around. I can tell you it's not a financial motivation, because this metal panel is pretty similar in cost to our stone and our glass, and so it's a lot of times that is a consideration. In this case, that's really not what we're here to ask for. It's really to maintain that design intent on where some of those different materials transition and overlap. I just want to be kind of honest about that, and that it's really intentional of what we're asking for in that sense, but certainly want to hear any concerns about how that might weigh
Go ahead,
into
Tom.
the discussion.
You said it was 78 on the other three?
So the other facades range from 78 into the 80s.
And overall, we're just over 77%.
Yeah, so east facade, 79.3. West facade, essentially 81%. South facade, just over 82%.
I really appreciate what you're explaining here. This is very helpful, and
Oh, it
we've
is.
kind of been begging for this for years, and
Yeah.
you know, from other, and it's just, I'm impressed. I got to tell you, I think I appreciate the care that has gone into this design.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I like the metal.
I do too.
I'm not reacting at all to it.
He's biased, but
You know,
I'm
it's your
biased.
problem if it doesn't last or rust or something. Oh, it won't, but.
No, it's aluminum base. The
what's
base
aluminum
metal
base?
is aluminum.
Yeah, it's an
so
Oh, okay, good.
It's a.
You said 30-year life, and I thought,
Well, warranty, so that kind of goes against fading or the paint starting to
Probably a
chip
longer
off.
warranty than brick, but brick lasts a long time too.
Yeah, so, you know, we wouldn't be using this if we were concerned that it was gonna start fading on us or not performing the way we
I
expected.
need excess maintenance.
Correct.
Should be very,
Yeah,
very low
the owner won't call us again if there's excess.
So I like it. I think you've done a very nice job. Very nice job.
Michael, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'm,
And I don't have,
sorry.
I mean, to me, 72% is almost 75.
The intent is
And
clearly
you've
there.
got reasons for your design reasons for why you did this, and so I'm willing to grant you the base standard modification on your 72%.
Michael?
yeah, no, I agree, right? The material should serve the purpose, which is to make it a first-class building. That's the intent of the ordinance or whatever, so this is perfect.
Other questions for these gentlemen, or anything you guys have to share? What about the fence, the wall?
Gabion wall, they don't have
I
that.
couldn't carry that today.
So,
Well, what is the metal? Call it, I'm gonna call it a
It's gonna be
cage.
a
as opposed to-
galvanized, yeah, sure,
galvanized.
it's a cage,
Yep,
it is a
that's
cage,
fair.
it's a cage for rocks. Two thoughts behind that, you know, we've got the rough stone on the outside, you know, the Fond du Lac stone. The idea would be we'd use the same Fond du Lac stone inside these gabions. The other good news is we aren't using it as a true retaining wall. It's really a landscape feature. It's totally internal to the site. It's something that you really don't see from outside the site. And it's really trying to bring the building out to the parking lot is the way we're trying to use it. So it's a welded wire mesh that's fully galvanized. So it's gonna stay bright and shiny for quite a long time. And then the stone is loosely put in there, and then it's just, these cages are wired together and put together. I think the cage originally came around because that's how they transport loose stones to sites oftentimes, so I think it started as that. It's been used very successfully, like on embankments as well for streams versus just loose laid stone or pilings or other things, just because it can be so robust. So we saw it as a way of softening, you know, the sidewalk and the asphalt of the parking lot. On your way to the building, it kind of gets you excited. It's
a transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of pulling out
I mean-
some of those
I'm excited.
materials. I mean, the brochure defines it as urban chic. Remember chic.
Oh, well, in that case.
So, you know, we're
concrete.
asking for.
Correct. It's not recycled concrete, no.
Right, so, you know, the other thought would be a loose laid wall. Think of it, I don't know if you think of Northern Ireland or something, you know.
Yeah,
where they put
I
the-
like the idea of a loose, stones loosely placed as a wall. I like that. It was just my initial wire cage
Yeah,
reaction, but I understand also why you want to contain it.
so it doesn't spill over,
So,
there's
yeah.
less maintenance, and, you know, it wouldn't be a hazard if a kid tried pulling one out, because you can't get it out of the
And
cage.
you say the metal is fully impervious to rusting.
As much as metal can be, yes.
Yeah, it's
It-
fully
it's
galvanized.
fully galvanized. I mean, it's a good galvanized finish. Will it never need maintenance? I won't say it won't ever need maintenance, but it should last a long time before it needs any sort of maintenance.
Any other questions for these gentlemen? Go
Very
ahead.
exciting.
Yeah, very, very nicely done. I have, as a gardener too, the landscaping stuff is fantastic. I think, and I think you really did make an honest effort. It's like, well, there are certain spots where there's just nothing you can do, but you more than made up for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Other
Exactly.
things, especially in the parking lot, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, we appreciate
we want to
that.
soften that from
Yeah.
all perspectives, so.
It'll be a model for others to follow, I think. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here from the audience to speak to this item today? Okay, nobody left but a reporter and city staff, so back to us.
very quickly, I do just want to highlight the access control variance
Yep.
element, so we can have a separate vote on that. So this is where I described you kind of have this curved drive coming into a curved street, but when we established this right away, it was squared off. So you don't have that traditional kind of meeting point between drive and property. So this is where we get to a 51-foot drive at property line. Code allows you a maximum of 30 in a traditional sense, so that we'll need that access control variance to get up to the 51 feet to accommodate the single entrance lane and the 2 exit lanes. And then as you get to actual back of curb, code allows a maximum of 40 feet with the flares. In this instance, we're out to about 46. The drive kind of at back of sidewalk gets down to about 39. So it is narrowing significantly from that 51 feet to where you would traditionally measure. Usually this distance would be measured here, but because of our unique right-of-way configuration, that's why we're at such a large expanse at 51 feet. So the recommendation is to approve that from 30 to 51 and from 40 to 46. That's it.
All right. Questions or issues on that as long as. All right, back to the commission.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion on the motion?
And this
Yep.
is item A, right? We have to have 2 votes?
Yep.
2 votes.
2 votes.
One goes to council, one does not.
Yeah, so this is item A. Any discussion on the motion? It's been moved and seconded. Let's call the roll. Andrea?
Is there?
Cummings.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Perry.
Aye.
Prop.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Oh, we needed to have discussion on the
I
alcohol
just,
vehicle.
discussion on the vehicle display. As you voted, it would be the 5.
Oh, pardon me. Forget I said anything.
Thank you.
Otherwise, it's the condition that we recommended. So.
Go
So,
ahead, Mike.
I would propose moving it to 8. I'd be hesitant to put conditions on it in terms of number of days a year, because
Right.
it's going to change annually depending on what their business needs are. But I'd be comfortable with 8 if they are, and if the city is, with the stipulation only 3 can be on the frontage.
Do we add to that, if there is a special function that they need more, they can go beyond the 8?
Kind of a blank check.
Better not.
Can they do that with a?
They can come back with a
permit
special
form? Yeah.
permit, can't they?
That's what I'm saying, if they've got a
It's an
special
event.
event, then.
Well, why don't they come back with a special permit and you'll say yes and.
Is there an avenue?
Do it that way. It's easier for us to handle that way.
Sure, I'll go with 8.
8, and if they
Should
want.
we
I was
re-vote?
good. Well, yeah, does the first person who made the motion support that?
Yes.
The person who seconded it support that? All right, any discussion on that? Then let's re-vote.
Okay. Cummings.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Perry.
Aye.
Prop.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, as far as item B goes, 4B, Mark, do you have anything else to add besides?
No, I just think the unique configuration of this parcel really leans itself to the need for this access control variance.
Do we have any discussion on that?
I'll
or-
move it.
All
Or
right.
did we already do it?
I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Perry.
Aye.
Prop.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Item number 5, public hearing, text amendments to the zoning ordinance. Fun for all here.
Oh, boy.
Are you
Please
gonna go
don't
over
read
each
this whole
and
thing.
every one?
Please do not read this.
Well, I mean, that's gonna be the question. We can do a
Word for word,
We can do a brief overview of what we're proposing. We're proposing a number of cleanups to our ordinance that we've been meaning to get around to. Brian, how do you wanna go over this? We can go over some of the more significant ones, or we can go over line by line. I think there's about 26 changes that we're proposing in here. If anybody has anything that's special that they want to discuss, we can discuss that. I think some of the more significant ones that we have in here, if you go to page 2, section 30-62C, regarding conditional uses and heavy industrial districts, we're requesting to change that to allow for a personal storage facility. So that if you're in a HI district, we got to remember that not every one of our HI districts is controlled by the city. It's not a city industrial park. So we're saying that in some of these districts that maybe we could have a personal storage facility. It's Down at the bottom, regarding section 30-53G, regarding maximum impervious surface ratio. This is one that we found that I think we made a mistake on, because I think it's sitting right now at 50%. Well, even in our suburban mixed-use area, we're up at 70%, and that's in the more suburban areas. We're saying in the downtown area, we should get that up to about 75%, because you're in the urbanized area, you have more development on that. Next page, on page 3, that we're simply changing our fees to say that if we're creating a new section pertaining to, we have service fees for inspections. Now we can potentially have service fees for zoning violations. And this is one of those things where if we're constantly dealing with you on an issue, and we want to be able to service fee that to get our time back. Let's see, down more towards the second to the bottom, section 30-52 regarding permitted uses in suburban mixed-use districts. This is where we're changing it to allow outdoor commercial entertainment as a permitted use in those SMU districts. Right now, outdoor commercial entertainment is currently a conditional use permit in SMU. We're just saying, let's allow it and let our ordinances apply to that, our nuisance ordinances, things like that. The one on the bottom is probably more significant. Section 30-52C regarding conditional uses. We're recommending that we pull back a lot of those conditional uses that are in the SMU districts. We're doing this in a few districts you're going to see, because you see those associated tables, and we're probably overreacting right now. We're overreacting because of what the state just recently passed last year, saying if you have a conditional use permit, you have to approve it. Well, they gave us no time to react to that. So what we have to do right now is, until we can revise our conditional use permit ordinance, we're going through and saying, let's pull these back now until we can figure out what to do with that. Mark, anything on that?
Yeah, there were a lot of uses that were originally put in that when the ordinance was written, we felt as conditional use, done appropriately, we could approve them, and if council really didn't feel like this instance they were doing it correctly, we could deny it. With the state law change that basically says you have to approve it, and you can't put on that many conditions. The conditions have to be reasonable, and if you put those conditions on, you have to approve it. We just felt, let's pare that back and really take a kind of a more guarded approach to it, and we'll readdress it in the future if maybe there's some of those uses that we can, as we revise our conditioning ordinance, put back in.
So yeah, we're doing the same thing. If you go to turn to the next page, we're doing the same thing in the urban mixed-use districts. So we're pulling a lot of those out. And as part of our attached material, you have all these nice charts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's where you're seeing that we're taking a lot of the conditional use permits out. Section, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 down, regarding windows and doors existing on 1- and 2-family homes. Right now, every time you get a variance request for design standards variance on the side facade, we approve it. Simply saying, let's get rid of it. We still are maintaining it on the front facade, the curb appeal side facade. We're taking it off the side, simply because we approve every one. So why make them go through that process and approve it? Let's see, the latter part, the bottom of that, section 30-54C, amend section to delete outdoor display as a conditional use in central mixed use districts. What we're saying is we're getting rid of it. You can't have outdoor display in the central mixed use districts, right? That's what it's saying.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Same thing for riverfront mixed use.
Same thing for the next one on the riverfront mixed use as well. So you can't have outdoor display in that district. And that's really some of the more significant ones. If you guys want to talk about anything individually, or if you want to have Brian go over each and every one of them right now, he's done such an outstanding job right now on his presentation.
We don't want him to waste his work, but on the other hand, Steve?
When you say outdoor display, now going down Main Street, usually in the farmer's market, but in the summer there's signs, from the
There's a temporary category, or there's a separate category for temporary display, where you put out some of that stuff on a daily basis in your urban area. This is more of that stuff that people are leaving out permanently. Correct. Yes.
Correct. So,
other questions or thoughts?
We've been meaning to get around to these for a while, but with
Thank
everything
you.
going on.
It's been a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work. And it's important, and I think we're right to pull back on conditional use.
We'll reevaluate what we need to do with that ordinance. We had a pretty strong ordinance before the state went through and said what they said to local municipalities with that change. So we have to figure out how to deal with it, and then they'll probably change it again, so. It's cynical.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Steve, Michael? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye?
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Darren?
Special meeting on Monday, we invited you all
Yep.
to.
On my
for the
schedule.
Corridors Workshop. Finally, we're able to present this thing. The consultant's gonna be here to present it, so it'll be nice. We invited you, the Traffic Review Board, Ped and Bike Council, to have a joint workshop and notice it as planned. With that, I'm done.
And no workshops for you tonight.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're
Just
done.
one comment now that we're adjourned. I think the Oshkosh